everyone, Joe here from ActionX. Welcome to What's on the Tube, where it's our show where we review things in the world of television, whether that is doing episode-by-episode reviews each and every week on our currently on-air programming, or doing these after the show's done, but non-spoiler edition season reviews, which is what we're doing today. Today we are reviewing the entirety of Perry Mason's Season 2 from HBO and HBO Max. It has came out after a long wait. It has arrived, it has come and went. And whether or not you decided to watch live or not, or you're still curious to see whether or not the final tally is, was this worth the wait? Was it worth the 3-year wait between Season 1 to now? Here it is. Now, again, once again, there will be no spoilers throughout the entire season. You will only get mild spoilers for the first episode of Season 2. So even if you want to be surprised for how Season 2 begins off, then this is not the review for you. But if you do not care about that and you just want to know what the entire theme of everything was, go ahead. I'm very excited for you to watch it. Again, you can still watch the entirety of Perry Mason Season 2 that's available right now on HBO Max, so please go check it out there. Please give all the support to that show. Which now, to get down to it, question number 1, which will lead to question number 2, was Perry Mason Season 2 worth the wait? Was it worth the nearly 3 years we had to wait for this season? Plus, was it worth the binge? Is it a show that, is a great follow-up to an already amazing show that premiered back in 2020? For me, personally, Perry Mason Season 2 is still a very good season of television. However, it does not match the quality and the what I felt to be a very high standard that Season 1 left us at the end of the day. And I believe Season 2, as much as, it did so much, and it did, a really great job of, emulating the Perry Mason feel that we loved in the first season, it definitely missed a little bit of something that kind of, carried through. And, that's no smart part because, again, when you're writing a miniseries, you are putting the absolute best quality into that because you only have this amount of episodes to tell your story. And then when you get the notice that, hey, we want you to do an entire second round of this, how do you do it? How do you really, how do you follow that up? It's a very tricky element to do, and honestly, it's no small feat. But yeah, so generally for me, was it worth the wait? I still think it was worth the wait. I did definitely still love this world. I love these characters, and not only when you do a follow-up, not only do you get to come back into this world, you get to experience new characters for the very first time and see how they service the story, how do they service the experience of the characters we've already loved so far, and how do we progress the story further in that regard. So that definitely was something that I was very much looking forward to, and I will say they definitely did achieve at the end of the day. But going into is it worth the binge? Is it worth sitting down and watching all 8 episodes in a row? I don't know. That's for the first time a little bit stumped. I could see the benefits of watching this, the entire thing in one day. It is only 8 hours, so if you were to sit down from noon to 8 p.m., you could bang out the entire season. But this isn't something that I was really on the edge of my seat for. I need the next episode now. It didn't have that hook in, which I will admit, Season 1 was not the same thing as well. Season 1 definitely was more like a slow burn. I think by the time you get to the second half of the season, you definitely were more inclined to see what the next chapter was. Because it kept you going. It kept you guessing what's going to happen next, what's going to be the next big loophole they're going to throw at you. But I can't say the same for Season 2, as I felt like they only really got good towards the middle episode, and then it kind of was okay, I'm just curious, but I'm not pushing to the end of my seat for. Per se. But again, before we get into any story details, again, I'm only going to be saying stuff that was prevalent in the first episode. Anything beyond that will not be available at this time. And that will hopefully entice you to you won't get spoiled. You won't get spoiled, as well as it will be something a little bit different for you to enjoy. So again, getting down to it. So into the story perspective, in my opinion, where we pick up, because again, the way Perry Mason Season 1 ended was very much a definitive, end to their origin story for Perry. This is a different Perry Mason. This is not the same character that you may have watched in the past, because, Perry Mason, it has a long history on TV. Hence, for him coming back to TV in this new iteration with a new actor and a new take definitely was the primary focus for them at the time was just to tell a new take on Perry Mason. Now here they get to follow up that story of like what happens next. Like how does this Perry Mason take everything that he learned from the first season and how does he apply it to be the lawyer that we presume he should be, or maybe it wasn't entirely what he signed up for. That definitely was a bit of the theme of the season, of identity crisis that I think a lot of the characters had throughout this entire season, especially our core 3 characters that were returning from the previous season, which was Perry, Della, and Drake. Definitely all of them had some sort of experience with identity crisis as you progress through the season, piece by piece. But even by the first episode, like even like when you see them, you know, months after season 1, you definitely start to see the cracks of like, you know, their newfound lives starting to like wither beneath them. Perry is realizing that being a lawyer isn't as cracked up as he was meant to be after finishing up his first case. Della's going through just the usual rigmarole of trying to survive in this economy and this, you know, environment, being who she wants to be and who she is. And as for Drake, you know, attempting to have this new start for himself, this like true path to justice, and having it not be as, you know, financially sound as he was anticipating to be. And definitely they throughout the entire season they grapple with that. Like, did they make the right choice? Are they on the right path? And what really are they fighting for? And definitely looking back on it, it is a serviceable, you know, element to follow up for. Because again, season 1, it was a lot. It was a very tricky subject matter for them to deal with that specific case. It definitely makes you question morals. It makes you question, you know what the reality of things is. And that kind of continues again in season 2. With that, but also on the other spectrum is the mystery itself, because you know you can't have a Perry Mason, you know, season without a case for him to solve. And they once again do another case a season trope, which instead of the original classic, which you get a case every episode, it is a brand new mystery, a brand new case for Perry and Della and Drake to crack. And this time it's a bit different. Obviously, you can't really replicate what you did in season 1. Otherwise, they're gonna say, "Oh, you're just copying and pasting again, just this time with new characters." That definitely isn't the case whatsoever. This go around, it's a new mystery. What I can say from the first episode is that it revolves around a rich family called the McCutcheons, and their involvement. And again, the way they set that up instead of season 1, where season 1 you immediately kick off the entire series with the actual mystery. This time it's a bit of a slower burn. Like you get to discover elements about the entire murder itself within the first 2 to 3 episodes of the season, and then you get to the really more like, you know, case solving, you know, revelations every week sort of thing, that unlike that season 1 did much more earlier, so to speak. And I do admit it was a way, because, you know, not only was season 1 was just like, that is a very, you know, they threw you at everything. This time around, they were a little bit more selective. They were just like, in the premiere specifically, they were more focused on reintroducing you to the characters that you know and love, and then, you know, bringing in these new cast of characters that will hopefully also be intriguing, which I will say for the most part, they are sadly not. I do not think that most of the characters that were introduced this season were up to snuff. I generally was not really getting well into it, and I think it's different. I feel like it's just like I think this time around the subject material and, like, you know, just what the morals behind it were the more prevalent themes to talk about than the actual characters per se. Again, this is a non-spoiler review, so it's a little bit difficult for me to like get the right words across that doesn't spoil anything, but it also doesn't, you know, I can actually express what I'm really talking about here. Where we begin the season progressively, and then, you know, with me and the family and understanding what the stylistics are going to be for this season, it definitely is a different approach. And once again, I will say they succeeded on the moral side of things, getting you to think of like who's right or wrong. But of course, obviously, it does not really it doesn't like make me feel emotional for the characters per se. Even when we get to discover more and more layers of the actual mystery, it is still a bit difficult for me to, like, you know, really feel compassionate, to feel that these are characters that I can, like, really, you know, get to be worried about. It doesn't really achieve that quite same factor as we did last go around. And some things, to be honest with you, like I feel like it's weird that, like, when you have a in this day and age, when you have shows that are no longer having to do the 22 episode orders or doing these long, like even 13 episodes order, that you have the opportunity to tell a very tight story with 8 episodes. I feel like they still introduce a lot of elements at us, and they didn't really follow up on everything that they set up to be. Where the thing about season 1 was they were able to introduce everything, and they were able to wrap everything up on a nice bow, because again, they were now relying on a season 2 to continue telling their story. They focused everything on the first season as it was the only season, and that was it. This time around, I felt like there were certain things that they weren't able to squeeze in there, so they kind of either rushed it out for the sake of completionist, or they're kind of hoping to save some scraps of it for season 3 if we do get one, which at the time of this recording, we do not have a season 3. And that's usually not I guess you just gotta assume what the caliber of TV is. I know every show is hopeful to have multiple seasons under its belt, but at the same time, like, you still want to tell your complete story in that season. And I guess I feel a little indifferent when it comes to Perry Mason, because it is definitely a different caliber. It's not your traditional network television. This isn't it. It's a show that can take the time to tell the story that it really wants to do, but hopefully, and the extent of, like, this feels like a complete story, which it does not. It does not feel like a complete story. I feel like at best you get 85% of a story here, and the rest of the 50% you kind of hope that a season 3 will resolve those remaining after effects once you do get there. But it's nowhere near by the time you begin this season. So that's it for the story stuff that I'm able to talk about. Like, I'll just say loosely is that it has a great idea. It has a great, message to tell, great arguments to have with your morals, but definitely the new characters do not really lift the weight. Not all of them. Some of them do. Some of them are great additions to the already existing cast, but some of them do not really contribute much to the larger story thing. But onto, like, the actual characters, our returning characters. Once again, Matthew Reeves does an amazing job as Perry Mason. Definitely, this being his second go around, able to, like, really dive a little bit more deeper into Perry's psyche, and to, like, explore some of his, faults, which he did do a lot in the last season, but definitely this is, like, him trying to have this semblance of, like, I got my shit together, but at the same time still being the same Perry we know and love. Like, he does not know what he's doing. And this time around with this, having, more stakes than ever, not just for, the clients he's defending, but also just in the sake of, like, his actual career itself hangs in the balance, since this is his follow-up case. This is, like, his next big follow-up since the last case. Because he's been doing some other things on the side in order to, make ends meet, because, not only do you want to do something that you're passionate about, you got to make money about it. And, sometimes doing the big stuff doesn't always pay. It just does you for the reputation. Definitely they did a lot of Perry this season, and also some things that I will admit, and this is more like a story perspective for Perry, not like the character himself, but I do believe some of the things they were trying to leech on Perry this season didn't quite stick the landing per se. It definitely, like, continued to add more elements to his character, but definitely did not assist much longer in the story completion per se. On to Della. I will say a lot of Della's original story is remembered, but some aspects of it were thrown away this season around to introduce new factors and new characters into her story, which again is very respectful. A fact that I forgot to mention, there are new showrunners this time, new writers, telling the continuing stories of Perry Mason. And, obviously they're not going to be withheld by, the already established story, but they're here to, like, be able to say their own piece, tell their own tale on the matter, and, will have the introduction, like, to be able to put in new characters to the story, but as well as, manage to bring some old ones out and, and put them away, which they did do a few times this season. They definitely, like, reduced some of the original characters' roles, which you could say, like, they had their purpose in the last mystery. They don't really have a purpose here now, but the ways that, like, they reduced them and stuff were not exactly the ways I would have done it as well. I wouldn't have done those methods that they pursue, and that's just my own personal opinion. Nonetheless, but Della definitely has the most growth this season. She definitely has the more, again, like at the end of season 1, she has the most promise of potential to grow into an amazing character, and definitely they do continue her, like, focusing more on her emotional side more so this season, and definitely it makes her a much more well-rounded character than ever before. As for Drake, I feel like Drake goes on a little bit more of the darker side this season, definitely. Last season, he was more of like playing by the books, trying to be this cop, like, in this very, kind of corrupt city. And this time around, he's kind of like this lone independent contractor kind of character. And he definitely has to learn the realities of things. Like, it's not as easy as it's going to seem or it's going to be. So definitely he had to wrangle with that a lot of points this season, even all the way from the beginning to the end, and definitely he comes out as a much more different, but it's still same character than we know from the first episode this season to the last, especially from the last season as well. As for some of the other returning characters, there isn't that much per se. Some characters you'll have to like really remember if you haven't watched season 1 since 2020. They definitely do bring back Strickland. They bring back the one of the ADA lawyers from the last season that's now been promoted. You have some of the minor characters from the last season coming back, and then of course obviously you have the whole slew of new characters, including the McCutcheons, which I mentioned are not that memorable. They definitely did not do a unique approach to them, in my opinion. They definitely did something a little bit more old-fashioned and like safe, which it did not really win me over per se, so to speak. But they do introduce a ton of other new characters throughout the season. Well, I can't give anything away because I did promise I won't spoil anything beyond the first episode. I will say that, some of them do they do make a mark in this season. They do definitely help out a lot with the main story, with some of the characters. But some were like written in questionable fashion. Like, why did we really need this character? Was this really necessary to the larger scheme of this story? Or was this just like trying to fill in the runtime, which is kind of weird because like I said, like they introduced too many elements and they didn't have time to do it, but it feels like at times they had a lot of time to fill, so they introduced some certain stuff to be able to fill that time void, in my opinion as well. Other takeaways I'll say is that the music, once again, very fantastic, very much that same period piece that we fell in love with the first season. It definitely does return and is even improved so in the second. The same cinematography is also great as well. And just once again, going back into this world, going back into this, time period definitely was like exactly perfect to what I was imagining it to be, per se. And definitely just to kind of round it out a little bit, like I do want to say that as much as I was excited for Perry Mason Season 2, I'm very happy that it's finally here, that it's finally done, it's out, it's able to like be rewatched over and over again. To add to this already existing story, but it's not quite it's not a strong follow-up chapter as I was hoping for, but I still would give the showrunners and the team, the creative team behind this go around, a lot of credit for like being able to at least put out a very good season of television, which nowadays it's still very tricky to do. So I will commend them for them, and hopefully if they get the opportunity to do a third, that they will just use and improve everything that they learned from this season as well. So from ActionX, I'm going to give this Perry Mason Season 2. It is worth watching, just not worth the binge. But overall speaking, it's still a very great follow-up to an amazing first season, making this season great on its own right. But let me know in the comments below, did you watch the second season of Perry Mason yet? What did you think of it? Of course, try to keep it non-spoiler in the comments below. Let's have a conversation about it, and I will hopefully comment to you back, because I love having conversations with you about shows that I love. But yeah. So then that's going to do it for me. Thank you so much for watching. If you were unaware, this has been What's the 2 from ActionX reviewing the second season of Perry Mason non-spoiler edition. If you want to know what we're doing normally, What's the 2 besides our Perry Mason reviews. Currently right now, we're doing Rookie Feds, and Walker reviews each and every week after Brand Emphasis on their respectful nights. But if you don't care about Perry Mason, sadly, this is the last Perry Mason video we're going to be making for, I believe, quite some time. It's going to be a while before we get a possible third season, or we may never get a third season. Who knows? HBO Max, or soon to be Max, is in a very different ball game now. It's a very different time period where a season 3 may not quite be as easy on the table per se. But if you are curious to see what we could see in season 3, we made a season 3 predictions video last week, so you can go check that out right now as well. But if you also are about to begin your own season 2 watch along, just in case if you haven't watched it yet because of this video, we have produced episode reviews for each and every Perry Mason episode from the season. So if you want to have a companion podcast to watch while you're watching it, you may do so. We've recorded all 8. They're all out, so you can go check them out there. But again, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't yet. Like, favorite, share if you want to. Ring the bell for more updates. And follow social media. But until we see each other again, for all you Masoners out there, thank you so much for watching. Whether it's this video or for the last 10 weeks, thank you so much. But until we see each other again, stay safe out there. Be good to each other. And as always, peace out.